Aloha, and welcome tenants and employees. Thank you for viewing the annual environmental training for the State of Hawaii Department of Transportation Airports Division, also referred to as DOTA henceforth. Please ensure that the brief 10-question survey and roster sign-in sheet are completed and sent to the DOTA environmental section upon completion of the training video. This training video serves several purposes. DOTA needs to ensure that all users of airport properly comply with the applicable environmental regulations. The users include tenants and employees of the airport. Additionally, this training will discuss various best management practices, also known as BMPs, that can be applied to reduce impacts to stormwater runoff and ultimately the state waters. Learn about how to respond to spills occurring at airport property. Most importantly, we want to take away one lesson from this training, and that is to be part of the solution to the pollution. Stormwater pollution can occur when rain comes into contact with pollutants on the ground. Pollutants may come from many sources, some of which include aircraft or vehicle leaks, material or chemical spills, lavatory waste, excess dirt and debris on a facility, or trash. As the stormwater sheet flows over the ground, these pollutants are picked up and have the potential to be carried away into the storm drain system. Storm drain systems consist of various structures that include drain inlets, manholes, underground pipelines, and canals. All storm drain systems eventually lead and discharge into the ocean and do not go to a treatment plant as opposed to a sanitary sewer system. This stresses the importance of preventing pollutants at the source before they can enter the storm drain and potentially discharge into our waterways and oceans. The Environmental Protection Agency has delegated authority to the State of Hawaii Department of Health, the DOH, Clean Water Branch, for administering the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, or NPDES program. Specifically, the NPDES is a requirement of the Clean Water Act under Code of Federal Regulations, Title 40, Chapter 122, as well as Hawaii Administrative Rules 11-54 and 11-55. DOH issues NPDES permits to the DOTA that authorizes stormwater runoff discharges from the Small Municipal Storm Sewer Systems, or MS4. An MS4 is a system designed or used to convey stormwater owned by state, city, or public entity that discharges to the waters of the U.S. The MS4 is not part of a sewage treatment plant or a combined sewer. Additionally, DOH issues NPDES permits for stormwater discharges related to industrial activities at base yard and tenant facilities. The NPDES permit, discussed in the previous slide, governs airport operations and requirements for tenants. Implementation of BMPs are the primary tool that the airport uses to meet their requirements and must be implemented in accordance with the two small MS4 permits. The Daniel K. Inouye International Airport, also known as Honolulu International Airport, has an individual NPDES permit for its small MS4. One of the requirements of the NPDES permit is to develop a stormwater management program plan, or a SWAMP. The H&L SWAMP includes BMPs that are required to be implemented at the airport. Kahului Airport, on the other hand, has a general permit for its small MS4. Kahului Airport also developed a SWAMP, including BMPs that are required to be implemented at that airport. Additionally, Kahului, Lihue, and Molokai airports have general NPDES permits for industrial activities conducted at their base yards. BMPs must also be implemented in accordance with Inspection and Enforcement Manual. For more information and links to these documents, please visit the airport website shown below. In addition to implementing the BMPs, tenants are required to maintain and update a site-specific stormwater pollution control plan known as a SWPCP or a BMP plan on site, comply with the DOTA stormwater inspections that are conducted by the DOTA Environmental Section and their consultants, complete the annual stormwater training by watching this training video and completing the survey and roster. Lastly, all tenants at the airport must complete the DOTA Stormwater Runoff Discharge Agreement and submit to the DOTA Environmental Section. An example of the DOTA Discharge Agreement is here. Please keep in mind that these permits must be kept on file at all times. Additional tenant requirements include knowing your Standard Industrial Classification Code, or SIC code. All facilities with regulated SIC codes that meet the definition of industrial are required to obtain an NPDES permit. You may verify your SIC codes at the link below. If your facility has a regulated SIC code, but the industrial activities and materials are not exposed to stormwater, you may qualify for a Conditional No Exposure Exclusion, a CNEE. Tenants are required to comply with their NPDES permit requirements from DOH, including, but not limited to, developing and maintaining an SWPCP, conducting inspections, monitoring, etc. Another requirement of the airport's NPDES permit is to implement BMPs at construction sites. Details of the airport's Environmental Construction Management Program may be found in SWAMP Section C. A separate training presentation is available at the airport website shown here. If you are planning construction activities at your facility, you must comply with the following procedures. Obtain DOTA's approval for the construction project. A construction plan review is required to ensure that BMPs are adequate for the project, the proper permits have been obtained, and post-construction BMPs have been considered for projects over 1 acre. Specific forms are required for this plan review, and tenants should refer to SWAMP Section C prior to submittal. Once a plan is approved, the DOTA Environmental Section will perform an initial inspection to ensure that the stated BMPs have been properly implemented. Construction work shall not commence until the initial BMP inspection has been conducted and approved. Throughout the duration of the project, the DOTA Environmental Section will conduct routine inspections to ensure that BMPs are maintained. When violations are noted, DOTA can issue enforcement actions and increase the frequency of inspections. Consultation with the DOTA Environmental Section is required if construction is planned for your facility. The most effective way to control pollutants are by implementing BMPs. According to the EPA, BMPs are schedules of activities, prohibitions of practices, maintenance procedures, and management practices used to prevent or reduce pollution of waters in the U.S. Examples of BMPs include picking up trash, storing possible contaminants indoors and undercover, inspecting vehicles for leaks, and many more that will be the focus of today's training. The following references include BMPs for your operations. Please visit the DOTA website to review these documents. The first thing to do when selecting BMPs is to consider all of the activities conducted at your facility that may affect the stormwater runoff. The BMPs applicable to airport activities generally follow under the categories listed. Good housekeeping BMPs are applicable to all facilities and tenants at the airport. The goal of this BMP is to manage trash and debris in a manner that keeps separate from the stormwater runoff. The photos on this slide provide some examples of improper trash storage. In particular, the photo on the left shows an uncovered trash bin. Rainwater has the ability to enter the bin and discharge with the waste. The photo on the right shows a bin that has been overfilled, which has prevented the bin cover from closing. In addition, trash and other debris left outside of the bin are uncovered and may impact stormwater runoff. The applicable BMP in these situations are to first regularly empty bins and dumpsters before they are overfilled, and to always cover dumpsters after they are done being used to prevent contact with rain. Good housekeeping BMPs also ensure that facility storm drains and associated waterways are consistently kept clean. Conduct regular inspections of the facility and dispose of any trash and accumulated debris properly in the designated rubbish bins. If storm drains are particularly close to facility operations, such as maintenance or fueling, you may want to consider installing a treatment device, such as the safeguard pictured here. Ensure that if such devices are installed, that they are also properly maintained. Lastly, always ensure that trash and debris near storm drains or associated waterways are cleaned promptly before they enter the storm drainage system. As part of the regular facility cleanup mentioned previously, sediment and other debris should never be removed utilizing a water hose. Wash water from hosing down the facility may impact the receiving waters with potential pollutants and contaminants that they carry. Ensure that your facility is always swept or vacuumed, as the fine sediment can easily be carried away in the stormwater runoff and present a hazard to Hawaii's coral reef ecosystems. Good housekeeping BMPs vary based on activities that each facility conducts, so be proactive and consider how you can do your part in protecting our waters. First, identify all waterways and storm drain inlets in your work area. This is seen in the picture on the bottom, with clearly marked inlets. It is always a great idea to familiarize yourself with the facility and to identify how the stormwater flows on site. This will allow you to protect drains during certain activities that may pose a threat. If you notice that your storm drains are filling with debris, ensure that they are regularly cleaned. Ensure that personnel and workers are knowledgeable of facility BMPs, as they will be asked during inspections whether they have had training and which BMPs they are responsible for implementing. Lastly, conduct your own inspections of BMPs to ensure that they are effective and best suit your facility's operations. This is the drainage network map of Honolulu International Airport that shows locations of inlets, manholes, pipes, and drainage canals. Please be sure to familiarize yourself with the drainage map at your airport and identify where the storm drains on your site lead to, as the waters flow untreated to our natural waterways and oceans. The next category of BMPs are for vehicle, equipment, and aircraft washing. Washing activities should be conducted only at a designated wash rack that contains an oil-water separator or other treatment system where it will be treated prior to being discharged into the sanitary sewer. Washing of vehicles in undesignated areas is not permitted. When washing in a designated area, attempt to use as little water as possible to accomplish the task and ensure that it is contained within the wash rack. Any water that is not contained within the wash rack may be discharged to the storm drain system. Discharges often occur from wash racks when wet vehicles and equipment leave the contained washing area before allowing the equipment to dry prior to exiting. Please note that any discharge from washing activities into the MS4 is considered an illicit discharge, and DOTA will be required to escalate enforcement. The last consideration is to utilize DOTA-approved detergents, as some may not be compatible with the oil-water separators at the wash racks. In areas where a designated wash rack is not available, DOTA approval is required to conduct washing. DOTA approval is required for the implementation of alternative BMPs to completely contain the wash water and dispose of it properly. The goal of these alternative BMPs is to prevent the wash water with potential pollutants such as soap, dirt, metals, and oils from entering the storm drain system. This can be effectively achieved by containing the wash water. These systems may utilize a wet vac to completely contain and remove the wash water as the vehicle, equipment, or aircraft is being washed. Here's an example of BMP implemented at a tenant space that allows for proper collection and disposal of the wash water. Fueling BMPs consider regulations from the NPDES program as well as the Spill Prevention Control and Countermeasures, or SPCC program. Tenants are required to develop and implement an SPCC plan when aggregate capacity of the above-ground oil storage exceeds 1,320 U.S. gallons, or when the buried storage capacity exceeds 42,000 U.S. gallons. Note that oil storage at your facility does not include containers less than 55 gallons. Also keep in mind, if you have an SPCC plan, it must be reviewed every 5 years and updated when changes at your facility occur, such as changes in personnel, tank capacity, or site layout. All personnel must be trained on the SPCC plan according to the frequency written in the plan. Amendments to the plan must be made within 6 months of when such changes occur. In addition, inspectors will review to ensure that the routine inspection records of the tanks are maintained on site for a minimum of 5 years or in accordance with the SPCC plan. Operational fueling BMPs that should be implemented include inspecting hoses and nozzles for any cracks prior to use, thereby preventing releases. Those involved in filling operations should also stay vigilant in the event that any releases are readily and correctly identified. Ensure that the tank is not topped off, as this can increase the chances of oil spilling onto the ground and becoming a potential pollutant. It is important to respond to any spills that may occur promptly. It is a good rule of thumb to keep spill kits near the fueling area and to routinely test the emergency shutoff for tanks. Fuel trucks are regularly used at the airport for fueling aircraft. These trucks must have a spill kit on board, and personnel must be well trained in responding to spills that may occur from these activities. This next category of BMPs is specifically for auto body shops. There are many potential contaminants associated with auto body work, such as sanding, dust, paint, VOCs, etc. Therefore, the first BMP is to ensure that these activities are conducted indoors or undercover so that these potential pollutants are not impacting the stormwater runoff. Often, vehicles that require auto body work may be damaged, which is why it is vital to inspect the vehicle first and place drip pans beneath the vehicle to capture leaks until repairs are completed. A particular threat to stormwater from auto body work is the generation of dust from sanding operations. Due to its small size, the sanding dust is easily carried away, so be sure to regularly sweep and vacuum. This BMP applies to maintenance and repair of aircraft vehicles and equipment. It is important to keep equipment in good condition so that equipment fluids are not released into the environment. Conduct regular aircraft, vehicle, and equipment inspections to check for leaks and repair as necessary. Keep all maintenance records on site. If a leak cannot be repaired immediately, use a drip pan of sufficient capacity to contain the leaking fluid and later dispose of it properly. It is required that drip pans, especially those stored outdoors, are regularly cleaned to empty the contents and any rainwater accumulation. Please note that leaking aircraft, vehicles, and equipment are not allowed to be parked overnight on airport common use areas without prior approval from the airport's district manager and appropriate drainage controls. Salvage equipment includes those items that are no longer working and need to be disposed of. When storing salvage equipment, ensure that the following proper BMPs are implemented. Remove fluids and batteries so that releases will not occur to the environment. Additionally, if vehicles or equipment begin to rust, dispose or place in a covered area that will not impact stormwater runoff. All maintenance activities are required to be conducted in their designated areas where they will not have an impact on the stormwater runoff. Maintenance areas should also be located away from storm drains so that responders have the opportunity to clean spills before it discharges to the drainage system. Ensure that fluids removed from the vehicles and equipment are transferred to a designated storage container promptly. The storage containers must be labeled, closed, and placed within secondary containment measures. Materials stored at your facility may impact stormwater runoff and therefore are required to be kept indoors or in a covered area. Keep in mind that secondary containment is required for liquids and batteries. Examples of secondary containment measures include double-walled tanks, flammable storage lockers, and spill pallets or other containment measures. If materials must be stored outdoors, protect them from stormwater runoff by placing them on secondary containment measures and by also covering the materials using tarps. The secondary containment for materials must have the capacity to hold the volume of the largest container plus freeboard. Ensure that secondary containment measures are clear of accumulated rainwater or product, since a partially filled secondary containment measure can no longer contain releases. If rainwater accumulates within the containment, it may only be discharged provided that there are no contaminants present. For example, the stormwater in the spill pallet must not have a sheen. Always designate a person to empty the spill pallet, in which the discharge must then be recorded. Please note that if any product is present in the secondary containment, it must not be discharged and is required to be cleaned according to the spill response procedures. Other material storage BMPs include conducting regular inspections of material storage areas. Ensure that all containers are still in good condition and compatible with the materials stored. Broken or deteriorating containers must be replaced. Please note that all chemical containers must also be labeled, even if the container is empty. Empty containers must have an empty label. In the picture shown, each of these 55-gallon drums are clearly marked with empty labels. It is also important to keep and maintain a list of chemicals at the facility, along with the safety data sheets, or SDS. Keeping an inventory will assist in preventing employees from over-purchasing items, and also assist in ensuring that items are utilized prior to their expiration date. Both of these practices will reduce the generation of wastes from material storage. Facilities should also consider alternatives for hazardous chemicals, such as biodegradable solvents. Pesticides include herbicides, such as Roundup, used to control weeds on the facility, as well as insecticides, such as Raid. These particular products are harmful if discharged into the storm drainage system, as they can also kill aquatic species. Applicable BMPs include storing pesticides and application equipment in secondary containment, which include pesticide lockers pictured below. Solid waste storage and disposal is a broad topic and may be enforced under many additional regulations other than those described in the NPDES program. Tenants should be aware of those regulations and always follow the more stringent implementation of the regulations if there is a conflict. The list provided here are general BMPs that may be applied to solid waste. Consider using the entire product prior to disposal. If the container is empty, then there is a reduced chance that it would impact the stormwater runoff. Please keep in mind that the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, or RCRA's definition of empty, applicable for containers less than 110 gallons, is less than 1 inch of material remaining. In addition, it is vital to retain the original label and/or safety data sheet for disposal information, since it will provide specific information about storage and disposal procedures. Also, consider reducing material purchases to only those things that are required for the task, so that fewer potential wastes are generated when excess materials are not used. Recycle items such as scrap metal whenever it is possible. Inspect waste storage areas to look for releases and to ensure that waste containers are in good condition, closed, and properly labeled. Hazardous wastes are another waste category that are regulated under RCRA. First, determine if the wastes generated at your facility are hazardous, which may be done by referring to 40 CFR 261 for the definition of hazardous waste. If hazardous wastes are stored at your facility, ensure that the wastes are not mixed. BMPs for storing hazardous waste include keeping them indoors or undercover, ensuring that they are stored within secondary containment if liquid, and labeling them properly with the words hazardous waste and the accumulation start date. Ensure that wastes are disposed within the appropriate time frames, depending upon the facility generator size, and maintain the disposal manifest for 3 years. Airport inspectors will ask to see copies of these manifests to verify proper waste disposal. Universal waste includes hazardous waste items such as batteries, lamps, pesticides, and any mercury-containing equipment. If any of these universal waste items are stored at your facility, they must be placed in a structurally sound container and labeled with the words universal waste and include the accumulation start date. These items must be recycled within 1 year and disposal documentation should be retained. Please note that broken lamps or leaking batteries must be handled as hazardous waste. Many facilities are equipped with oil-water separators to separate oils from wastewater. Tenants with oil-water separators must maintain an industrial wastewater discharge permit, or IWDP, on site that is issued by the City and County of Honolulu. The oil-water separator must also be inspected at least semi-annually and cleaned as needed. Oil-water separator maintenance logs must be kept on site and will be reviewed by airport inspectors. Facilities that engage in the servicing of aircraft may also need to implement triturator usage BMPs. Please note that there is a separate triturator training that must be provided to lavatory waste operators. Contact the airport environmental health specialist for a copy of this required training. In general, when handling lavatory waste, operators should ensure that hose connections are secured and not leaking. Operators should be present during the offloading process to respond to any release that may occur. While at the triturator, operators are not permitted to wash the exterior of the truck. The triturators are not designed to contain the wash water, and it may run off to the storm drain system. If a spill does occur while at the triturator, as seen in the picture on the right, ensure that it is cleaned promptly. Spills may be cleaned using a disinfectant, rags, and/or a broom. Please ensure that kitty litter is not used to clean the lavatory waste spills, as it may damage the triturator system. Spills are a common way that pollutants are discharged from a facility to the storm drain system. Employees at your facility should be well trained in preventing and responding to spills that may occur, as well as protecting the storm drain system. Consider running a practice scenario or drill to ensure that employees are prepared for spill response. Additionally, every facility must have a spill kit. The spill kit should contain personnel protective equipment, or PPE, for employees to wear while cleaning the spill, such as gloves and goggles, a plastic bag or other container for disposal, non-sparking tools such as a broom, and some type of absorbent. The spill kit should be labeled and located near an area of the facility where spills are likely to occur, such as the fueling or material storage area. Post-emergency phone numbers for employees. Every facility should have a designated person who will ensure that spills are properly cleaned and make the necessary notifications. When a spill first occurs at your facility, begin spill response by stopping your work and shutting down your equipment. Attempt to determine the source of the spill. If it is from a drum, you may be able to patch the drum or transfer the drum's contents to stop the flow of the spill. If the spill is coming from larger equipment, such as a fuel tank, you may be able to hit the emergency shutoff button to stop the flow of the spill. Additionally, if the spill is a petroleum product, shutting off vehicle engines will prevent ignition of the material. Alert those in the immediate vicinity of the spill so that they do not enter the spill area and track the material. Next, determine whether the spill is within your means to clean. If you have sufficient resources, such as trained personnel and absorbent, then begin the spill cleanup. If not, ensure that a spill response contractor is promptly notified and storm drains are protected until cleanup is completed. Evacuate if necessary. When cleaning spills, begin by assessing your facility's spill kit and don the appropriate PPE. Contain the perimeter of the spill to limit the area affected using berms or absorbents. Also, ensure that any nearby storm drains or other waterways are protected. Allow approximately 15 minutes for the absorbent to bind to the spilled product. Ensure that the absorbent is not left for an extended period of time because it may be blown in the wind or carried away during a storm event. After the material has absorbed, sweep the area and dispose of the waste properly. For airports on Oahu, spent absorbent from petroleum spills may be double-bagged and placed in the regular trash to be burned for electricity. Neighbor islands may have to treat the spent absorbent as hazardous waste, depending on their landfill rules. Another important component of dealing with spills is notifying assigned personnel. First notification should go to your respective airport duty manager or airport operations control. Please review the list on this page for phone numbers at the airports. Additional notifications may be required for reportable quantity spills. For petroleum spills, the reportable quantity is 25 gallons or more, spills not cleaned within 72 hours, and/or spills that enter a surface water body. In these cases, you will need to notify the National Response Center, the DOH Hazard Evaluation and Emergency Response (HEER) office, and the DOH Clean Water Branch. They will also require a follow-up written report detailing how the spill was cleaned. Another component of the NPDES program is the identification of illicit discharges. Illicit discharge is defined by the EPA under 40 CFR 122 as any discharge to an MS4 that is not composed entirely of stormwater except permitted by an NPDES permit. The respective environmental health specialists for each airport are charged with investigating the source and eliminating illicit discharges. However, they need the assistance of everyone at the airport to help identify these problems. If you do see a potential illicit discharge, such as the one noted in this picture, please call 838-8002 or your respective environmental health specialist. In general, failure to comply with environmental regulations and airport procedures, including the implementation of BMPs, may result in enforcement. The DOTA has the ability to enforce as defined in the NPDES Inspection and Enforcement Manual. Enforcement actions will escalate beginning with a written warning. This may be something that the airport inspector will verbally state during their BMP inspection and then record on their inspection checklist. If the item is not corrected within the agreed-upon time period, then enforcement efforts may increase to a notice of violation. After the notice of violation is issued, then the DOTA can escalate enforcement under the lease agreement, which could result in a notice of eviction and/or, under the HRS 342D with DOH Clean Water Branch, using a notice of finding in violation, or NFVO. The EPA or DOH can conduct inspection and enforcement actions that result in fines. All fines are accrued on a per-offense, per-day schedule, meaning that if you have one violation but do not correct that violation for 1 year, the fine you receive may be multiplied by 365. The DOH has 2 different categories of fines that include civil and administrative. Civil fines can range up to $25,000 per offense. Administrative fines are further broken down into categories of negligent, knowing, and knowing endangerment, with fines ranging from $2,500 to $250,000. In particular, an organization can also be fined up to $1 million. As you can see, our daily activities at the airport have the ability to greatly impact the environment, whether we are DOTA personnel, inspectors, tenants, contractors, or even visitors. Implementing stormwater BMPs at the airports allow us to comply with regulatory requirements, avoid enforcements or fines, and most importantly, protect our water, which we all enjoy and rely on. Besides the regulations and fines, we all have a responsibility to protect our water because we live in beautiful Hawaii and want to keep it that way. Some of our favorite pastimes most likely include activities like swimming, surfing, fishing, snorkeling, or just enjoying our beautiful beaches and all they have to offer. For our local economy that is primarily supported by tourism and other industries that include fishing, tourists visit Hawaii for our pristine beaches, coral reefs, and endemic species only found here. It is our job to protect our ocean, as well as the aquatic life and ecosystems within it for generations to come. Thank you for viewing this presentation. As a reminder, please complete the brief survey and roster and ensure that they are sent to the DOTA Environmental section. For questions related to this presentation, more information on the DOTA Stormwater Program, or to report an illicit discharge, please contact the DOTA Environmental section at 808-838-8002. You can also send an email to dot.air.environmental@hawaii.gov or contact your respective environmental health specialist. Mahalo again for watching the tenant training video, and remember, be part of the solution to pollution.